All right, so what is the purpose or the function of short-term memory? Well, it gives us a place to rehearse information, and that's going to be really important as we go forward talking about how information gets stored for any length of time. You have to think about the material, you have to have a place where you can elaborate on that material, code the material, that kind of thing. So, rehearsal is really important. It gives us a place to hold material that has been retrieved from long term memory. So, that's another important function. Coding is what we refer to when we say this new incoming information is going to be attached to information that already exists in long term memory. So, coding is us connecting new information to existing information that's already in our memory store. And then finally, we have a place where we can make decisions about incoming information and so on. So it's this sort of catch all for whatever's going on at the moment, right? Like whatever information processing you're completing at the moment. So, some characteristics of the short term memory store, for one thing, the contents will only stay there for 30 seconds if you don't engage in some kind of rehearsal or some kind of deeper process. So when we say that it only stays there 30 seconds, the information is actually lost due to decay, not interference. So what does that mean? That means that if you stop thinking about something, it's not because the new information that you might be thinking about comes in and interferes and says, oh, I'm going to take up that cognitive space and I'm going to kick you out because you're old news. Instead, it's that the information that's in short term memory, if it's not actively attended to, will just sort of go away. If the connections get lost, the thought process that drove it gets broken, and it just decays out of short-term memory. So it's literally lost. It's not replaced, it's lost. Now, you can engage in rehearsal that will extend that 30-second duration. There's two different kinds. There's rote or maintenance rehearsal, and that's the kind that I was describing if you were to call information and ask for a phone number. You would just say that number over and over and over again until you could dial it, and then it's fine if it fades out of short-term memory because I already made my phone call, right? I guess I'll call 411 next time when I have paper because I have completely forgotten that number. Elaborative rehearsal, what some researchers call relational rehearsal, is where you connect the new information to things you already know, right? So you relate it to things, or you elaborate on the existing information and you think additional thoughts. Again, that's tying it to things you already know, right? But you're elaborating on the input so that in the long run, it might become more likely to transfer into long-term memory. So rote or maintenance rehearsal, it'll hold it there long enough for you to think about it, use it, and then you forget it and it decays. Elaborative or relational rehearsal is more the kind of rehearsal that's more likely to transfer information into long-term memory. Now, how do we know that rehearsal is key? Well, here we have the data from a study where the person learned the list of, usually it's a set of what we call CVC trigrams. So C stands for consonant and V stands for vowel. So in CVC trigrams, it's consonant, vowel, consonant, non-words. So it wouldn't be like wow, which is in fact a CVC trigram, right? WOW is a consonant, vowel, consonant. But it's a word. It's a real word. So it would be consonant, vowel, consonant that they would throw out any combinations that are in fact actual three-letter words. So you would be left with nonsense words. And you would teach the learner the list of words using whatever encoding strategy you want. We'll talk more about some strategies that can work. So they learn the list of CVC trigrams and then they get tested either 3 seconds later, 6 seconds later, 9, 12, 15, 18 seconds later. And what you see is very rapid decay without rehearsal. If there's a delay, and usually the delay gets filled with something. because the person might continue to rehearse inside their head, right? And so you don't know if they're allowing decay to occur or not. So you have to give them something else to do. So you maybe teach them the list of CVC trigrams and then have them do some addition and subtraction problems for the amount of time. And but in the 3 second delay, you just saying add these numbers is probably going to occupy the 3 second delay, but you distracted them. And so, in the absence of rehearsal, and that's how we know they didn't, subconsciously or subvocally rehearse, you see that the information is lost basically within 18 seconds. Now, CVC trigrams get lost faster than more meaningful stuff. If you have them learn a list of actual words, the information will maybe last as long as 30 seconds. So depending on what kind of content you're teaching them, you get longer or shorter decay. But certainly by 30 seconds. And some people have debated this. Some people have said it's 30 seconds. Some people say 20 seconds. Some people say, can it really matter that, if it's 20 or 30, let's just say it's pretty quick. That information decays out of short-term memory. So, anterograde amnesia, which is our top of our header here, provides us with evidence for the existence of a short-term memory store and a long-term memory store. So anterograde amnesia is when you have an inability to encode new information from long-term memory. So, I'm sorry, I said from really adamantly, and right there it says to, and I know it's to, and I said from really. This is when I wish I could edit my videos. Sorry, you get them raw. I don't know how to edit. So the inability to encode new information to long-term memory. So that transfer between that temporary store and the long-term store is where the break happens in anterograde amnesia. Anterograde amnesia, we know it's present because the person can only remember things for about 30 seconds. Every 30 seconds they lose track of what we were talking about. You could leave the room for 30 seconds, come back, and they think you're just now coming for the first time today. Those kinds of things. Like memories only last 30 seconds. By the way, if you've ever seen Adam Sandler and Drew Barrymore in 50 First Dates, is that the correct number? I think it's 50 First Dates. Anyway, they claim that she got this kind of amnesia from, because this is exactly the kind of amnesia she has. They claim she got it from a car accident, and that's not typically how you get anterograde amnesia. You get anterograde amnesia from damage to the hippocampus, which is deep in the brain. So if you look, here is the patient HM, which our textbook first mentions in chapter 1. They actually removed his hippocampus because they thought it would treat his epilepsy. So what we're seeing from this bottom view, like here's the spinal cord, we're looking up from the bottom of his brain here. You can see these gaps where his hippocampus should be. You can see that they're missing down here. They actually removed them because at the time, I don't think they really understood the role of the hippocampus, and they definitely thought that his seizures were emanating from his hippocampus. It did improve his seizures, but it gave him anterograde amnesia for the rest of his life. In a regular brain, you'll see these hippocampuses are visible right from the bottom and also from this front area. Now you can imagine, now that I'm showing you these, how bad of a car accident that would have to be for you to damage that region of your brain. Like you would not, I don't think you'd live through a car accident that is so severe that it wipes out your hippocampus, as was the plot in 50 First Dates. So I'm going to argue that here's how I was. It's an adorable movie. So in order to be able to watch it without yelling at it the whole time, what I told myself is that she had just a regular head injury, but then there was brain swelling, and the brain swelling post accident caused pressure on her hippocampus and a series of strokes in her hippocampuses that actually caused the damage that we see now afterwards. That's what I've come up with. It was a series of strokes. Because strokes are more likely to damage your hippocampus. Things like Alzheimer's damages the hippocampus. Certain kinds of viral infections can damage the hippocampus. So these are usually things that are internal to the brain. It's not usually a blow from the outside that would cause anterograde amnesia. But what you have is a person who cannot form new memories. And the fact that their memories last for about 30, as new information comes in, they can hold it for about 30 seconds. and then it's like they never saw it before. Makes an argument for short-term memory store being brief and that it needs to transfer to some other storage, right? Long-term memory is the explanation in this model. The other piece of evidence from people with anterograde amnesia is that is the piece of evidence that points to the existence of long-term memory. That would be that typically their long-term memories stay intact. They remember who they're married to, or that they have children, or what city they're from, or and certainly even more basic things like their ABCs and how to count, and all those stay intact. Like those memories are there, and so that implies that pretty much anything from prior to the injury, illness, that stuff stays. And it's the formation of new memories and this transitory nature of the short-term memory store, and the inability to take it from that short-term memory store and put it into the long-term memory store. This is where anterograde amnesiacs give us evidence that supports the interpretation that you have a short-term memory store and you have a long-term memory store. Now, just to illustrate this, I'm going to have you watch this video. Well, I'll have the correctly embedded one when we get there. In the playlist, showing Clive Waring, and he has anterograde amnesia from a viral infection that destroyed his hippocampuses, and so you'll see how he functions as a result of that kind of damage. So I'll see you on the other side of the video.